My name is Imani, and at 39, I thought I had achieved a state of impervious control. I had built my world on cold, hard certainty. A high-powered finance career, a 6-figure salary, 2 beautiful children, and a luxurious Atlanta home that represented not just wealth, but absolute security. I even bought that house for my parents to live in after they lost everything. But while I was at work, they moved my children's belongings, my own blood's things, into the cold, damp basement. They claimed, "Our other grandson deserves the best rooms." When I got home and saw my kids crying, huddled like lost lambs, I just smiled and said, "Pack your bags." They had absolutely no idea that their house was legally mine and that the eviction process was about to begin. Before I continue, let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and if you've ever had to choose between your parents and your children. Hit like and subscribe because the fallout from this choice was biblical. The click of the deadbolt echoed in the grand foyer at 9 p.m. It was the sound of my life coming undone. I had just closed a grueling 12-hour day analyzing market futures, my brain fried and my body aching. All I wanted was the sound of my children. Zoe, my bright 10-year-old, and Marcus, my sweet 8-year-old. But the house was silent, unnervingly silent. The usual happy chaos, the sound of bickering over a video game, the laughter at a cartoon was gone. Just the hum of the oversized refrigerator slicing the silence. A knot of sick dread tightened in my stomach. I dropped my leather briefcase on the cold marble floor and called out, "Zoe, Marcus, Mommy's home." Only the silence answered, and then a faint, muffled whimper. It wasn't coming from their bright, cheerful bedrooms upstairs. It was coming from below me, the basement. My blood ran cold, turning to liquid ice in my veins. I yanked open the heavy basement door and stumbled down the carpeted stairs, fear clawing at my throat. The sight that greeted me punched the air straight from my lungs. My children were huddled together on a bare mattress. It was just a spare guest mattress, hastily thrown onto the cold, tiled floor. All around them, strewn like wreckage, were their belongings. Their suitcases, their toy chests, Marcus's bin of Legos, Zoe's art supplies, all stacked carelessly against the damp concrete wall. This basement was unfinished. A cold, miserable space where we stored forgotten holiday decorations and the old water heater. The air was cold, thick with the heavy stench of mildew and dust. Zoe looked up, her face streaked with tears, her nose red and running. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice barely a sound. "Grandma Lorraine. She told us we have to move down here." I rushed over, pulling them both into my arms, feeling the sickening chill radiating from their small bodies. My little boy, Marcus, buried his face in my coat. His voice was small, broken, utterly defeated. "She said our room is for Cousin Leo now. She packed our stuff while we were at school," she said. "She said Leo is the real grandson, and he deserves the best room. She even claimed," my sweet boy managed to choke out, "that we make too much noise." I stared over their heads at the single dim bulb. I saw their breath fogging in the cold, damp air. The real grandson. The words echoed in the cold darkness of the basement. A sharp, icy rage, unlike anything I had ever felt, shot straight up my spine. It was not just anger. It was a terrifying, sudden, and absolute clarity. They had finally crossed the line, shattering the last fragile barrier of my tolerance. I kissed my babies hard on their cold heads. "Stay here for 1 minute. Don't move," I commanded, my voice barely a whisper, yet vibrating with dangerous intensity. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached with the pressure of suppressed fury. I turned, and I did not walk. I stormed back up those basement stairs, my heels striking the wood like heavy, deliberate hammers. I was not going upstairs for a conversation. I was not going for an argument. I was ready for war. The fury was a furious rhythm pounding against my ribs as I bypassed the main floor and took the upper stairs 2 at a time, heading straight for the children's wing. Their room, what was their room, was the second best suite in the house. A sanctuary with its own private bathroom and a large bay window overlooking the rose garden. I saw it before I even reached the doorway. The door was wide open, and the room was utterly unrecognizable. All of Zoe's colorful artwork had been heartlessly torn from the walls. Marcus's star-patterned curtains were gone. Their twin beds, the beds I bought and assembled myself, were vanished. In their place stood a brand-new, ridiculously oversized king-sized bed, topped with an expensive-looking comforter. Cheap basketball pennants were tacked crudely to the pristine walls. A massive 80-inch television, one we absolutely did not own this morning, was mounted opposite the bed. A new gaming console was already hooked up, its messy wires snaking across the floor. And there, right in the middle of this stolen, desecrated space, was my 9-year-old nephew, Leo, shoes on, jumping wildly and laughing. My mother, Lorraine, was there. She was 63, a figure of perpetual sternness born from years of perceived slights against her chosen ones. She had her back to me, humming softly, meticulously unfolding a new set of high thread count sheets. "Mom!" I yelled, the sound tearing from my throat. She didn't turn around. "Oh, you're home," she said, her voice sickeningly breezy. She snapped a pillowcase in the air with a self-satisfied flourish. "I'm just getting things rearranged. Your sister Alicia and Chad are on their way, and little Leo needs a proper quiet space." My voice was shaking, thick with venom, barely allowing the words out. "A quiet space? And you decided the best way to achieve that was to kick my 8 and 10-year-old children into the cold, damp basement?" I gestured wildly down the hall at the injustice. "You didn't even call me. You didn't think to ask me?" That finally made her stop. She spun around, her face instantly twisting into a perfect mask of self-righteous indignation. "What tone is that you're using with me, Amani? I am your mother." She spat the words out like curses. "I don't need permission to rearrange things in my own house. Your kids can stay anywhere. They're young. They'll be fine. Stop being so selfish. Honestly, you're 39 years old. When are you finally going to learn how to act right and respect your elders? My house." The sheer arrogance of the phrase hit me like a physical, brutal slap, momentarily knocking the wind out of me. The shaking in my voice, the hot, stinging tears of raw anger that had threatened to spill it all vanished. It was replaced by an absolute, chilling, and focused ice. My house. The phrase was a razor wire cutting the last thread. Of filial duty I had left. I remembered being 18 years old, clutching my full-ride academic scholarship to a prestigious finance program. I ran home, certain that finally, I had made her proud. My mother was on the porch, talking to a neighbor. I held out the acceptance letter, glowing with my achievement. She barely spared it a glance. She just waved her hand dismissively and muttered, "She just got lucky, all that affirmative action, you know." Then she looked at me, her eyes hard. "Now you have to learn how to make real money to take care of this family, not just chase silly dreams with your books." My great, hard-won achievement, reduced to nothing in an instant. And now, 21 years later, standing in the 6-bedroom, 5,000-square-foot luxury home that I had paid for in cash, nothing had changed. I was still the ungrateful child, the lucky one, the resource to be exploited, never the daughter to be proud of. The shock evaporated completely. The trembling in my hands ceased. I felt my face settle into a calm, cold mask of resolve. My breathing became deep and utterly even. She mistook this agonizing, terrifying silence for my usual submission. She huffed, smugly satisfied. "Good. Now that that's settled, go tell your kids to keep it down. Leo needs to rest before his parents get here." I looked at her. I really, truly looked at her. I saw the entitled child jumping on the bed. I saw the woman who just sentenced my own children to shiver in a mildew-ridden basement. I took one long, slow, final breath, and I smiled. My mother, Lorraine, crossed her arms, the smug look of guaranteed victory settling on her face. She was waiting for the familiar Imani response, the tears, the begging, the pleading, the futile attempt to list all the reasons my children deserved to sleep in the rooms I bought. She was waiting for the fight she knew she would always win. In the corner of the doorway, my father, Joe, 64, a man defined by a lifetime of cowardly enabling, did what he always did. He found a spot on the wall to stare at, wishing himself invisible, his silence a full co-signature on my mother's cruelty. I looked away from my father's disgusting cowardice and focused solely on my mother. She was still waiting for my surrender. So, I gave her a response, but it was the one she could never have scripted. I let a slow, cold, terrifying smile spread across my face. It didn't reach my eyes. It was a pure, cold gesture of power. "You're right, Mom," I said. My voice was suddenly calm, terrifyingly clear, and completely devoid of human emotion. "You are absolutely right. Leo deserves the best room." Lorraine's eyebrows shot up, startled. My easy surrender was too fast, too total. Her victory was too simple. After a second, her surprise curdled into pure, ugly, gloating triumph. She puffed herself up. "Well, it's about time you saw things clearly." I didn't say another word. I turned my back on her triumph, on my father's shameful silence, and on the hideous sight of my children's room, which now felt permanently desecrated. I walked out into the hallway and went straight back down the stairs to the cold, dark basement. My children were exactly where I had left them. Zoe was trying desperately to be brave for her little brother, but fresh tears were streaming down her face. Marcus was just shivering, his small hands tucked into his armpits for warmth and comfort. I heard my mother's footsteps following me down. She was basking in her repulsive win. She loomed at the bottom of the stairs, a triumphant silhouette against the light from the hallway above. "See, kids," Lorraine said, her voice dripping with cruel condescension. "Your mother finally understands. I told you Grandma knows what's best for this family." I ignored her completely. I walked over and knelt directly on the cold concrete floor, right in front of my beautiful children. I pulled out my handkerchief and gently wiped Zoe's face, then Marcus's. "Zoe, Marcus," I said. My voice was soft, warm, filled with a tenderness that had been completely absent a moment ago. "Don't cry anymore, my loves." But Grandma said. "I know what Grandma said," I interrupted gently. I looked them both straight in the eyes and I gave them a real smile. A true, warm smile just for them. "Now I need you to listen to me very carefully. Pack your bags." I pointed to the bin of Legos, to Zoe's art supplies, and to the toy bin too. "We're going somewhere much, much better." The change was instant. Lorraine's triumphant posture vanished, collapsing entirely. "What?" she shrieked, the sound echoing, frantic, against the concrete space. "What did you just say?" I stood up slowly, turning to face her. The smile I gave her now was the icy professional one. "What are you talking about, Amani?" She sputtered, her face turning blotchy red. "You're leaving? You're going to pack up and leave over this? Over a silly room? Your sister is about to walk through that door. You're going to embarrass me in front of Alicia." I took a single deliberate step toward her. She instinctively recoiled, taking a frightened step back. "Oh, I'm not going anywhere, Mom," I said. My voice was barely above a whisper, yet it cut through the cold air like a wire, sharp and precise. "Not tonight, anyway." I let the devastating silence hang there, watching the sheer confusion and dawning panic fight for space in her eyes. "But I promise you," I continued, my voice firm and low, "you are about to learn exactly what it feels like to have nowhere to go. Very, very soon." Lorraine's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. She was utterly baffled, completely without a script. She didn't know this, Imani. And right on cue, as if summoned by the sickening tension, a loud, insistent sound rang through the house from upstairs. The doorbell. My sister, the golden child, had arrived. My carefully constructed war had just been joined. The real drama, the definitive end of my life as a victim, was just about to begin. I will continue the script, ensuring Chapter 3 is approximately 1,000 words, maintains Imani's angry and painful internal monologue, and follows the narrative from the outline. Viral script. Kicked out for the golden grandchild. Chapter 3. The ungrateful child living for free approx. 1,000 words. Before I could even process the insistent, jarring sound of the doorbell, I heard the heavy front door burst open. There was no polite knock, no civil entry, just the sickening sound of the heavy oak door slamming violently against the entryway wall. "We're here," a shrill voice shrieked, slicing through the tense air. It was Alicia, my 7-year-old sister, the eternal golden child, arriving like a wrecking ball. I took a deep, steadying breath, bracing myself against the chaos I knew was coming, and led my children, still shivering and confused, up the basement stairs. We emerged into the grand foyer just in time for the main event, the arrival of my entitled tormentors. Alicia burst into the living room like a hurricane, all designer sunglasses and dramatic chaos. Right behind her shuffled her husband, Chad, 39, white, reeking of the kind of unearned confidence that only comes from never having worked a real day in his spoiled life. He was dragging 4 oversized, ridiculously expensive suitcases behind him. "Finally," Alicia announced to the room, pulling off her sunglasses as if she were a celebrity gracing us with her presence. Chad, meanwhile, didn't bother to lift the suitcases even an inch. He deliberately dragged them across the polished oak floor of the living room, leaving 4 long, sickeningly pale scratches in his wake. My father, Joe, the pathetic man who spent every single Saturday waxing and obsessing over that floor, visibly flinched. I saw his hands clenched tightly at his sides, but as always, the coward. He said nothing. "God, I am exhausted," Alicia declared, collapsing onto the velvet sofa like a sack of privileged rags. The flight was just brutal. She didn't even bother to look at me, already inspecting her nails. Imani, why are you just standing there? Go get the rest of the bags from the car, and someone get me a glass of wine. She was treating me like hired help, a piece of invisible furniture in the house I owned. Chad, completely oblivious to the expensive damage he'd just caused, clapped my father on the shoulder with a wide, smug grin. Joe, what a place. Seriously great house. So spacious. He boomed, his voice grating. I told Alicia there was no need to worry. I told her your parents would definitely take care of us. Your parents. Take care of us. The utter blindness of his entitlement made my stomach churn with fury. My mother, Lorraine, was absolutely beaming, all her earlier frantic panic completely forgotten. She rushed over to Alicia, fawning over her favorite child. Oh my. Sweet baby, you must be so tired. Of course, Imani, go get your sister some wine. Don't just stand there. And then Alicia, in her usual shrill, demanding voice. And Mom, is Leo's room ready? You did get the new mattress, right? And the air purifier? You know he can't sleep without his HEPA filter. Lorraine nodded eagerly, a sick eagerness to please. Of course, baby. It's all set up. The best room in the house, just like I promised. The best room, I said. My voice was quiet, a low, controlled sound, but it sliced through the room like a cold knife. Everyone froze, finally looking at me. Alicia's head slowly turned, her eyes traveling down to notice, for the first time, that Zoe and Marcus were standing beside me, clutching their jackets, their small faces pale and tear-stained. She saw us standing right at the top of the basement stairs. A slow, malicious smirk, the same cruel smirk she'd worn her entire life spread across her face. Oh, she said, her voice dripping with fake, syrupy sweetness. There you are. You and the kids are staying in the basement. That's perfect. She laughed, a short, barking, ugly sound. That's actually great. The basement is basically soundproof, isn't it, Mom? At least Leo won't be bothered by all their screaming and running around when he's trying to study. You know how gifted he is. He needs his peace and quiet. I looked at my sister, the golden child who had failed out of 2 different colleges. I looked at her husband, Chad, a useless con man whose entire pathetic career was nothing but a series of failed startups funded by my parents' retirement account. And I thought about their gifted nephew, the one who displaced my babies. I let out a short, dry, disgusted laugh. Study? I asked, the word hanging. Alicia's smirk faltered. What's so funny? I don't know, Alicia, I said, walking slowly into the living room, my children clinging close behind me. I just find it interesting that Leo suddenly needs so much quiet to study, because the last I heard, he wasn't doing much studying. The last I heard, he was expelled from that expensive private school for theft. Something about stealing other kids' Adderall and selling it. Alicia's face went white. My mother gasped. Imani, how dare you? I ignored her and turned my cold, hard gaze on Chad, who was still standing by the scratched, ruined floor. So, Alicia, Chad, how long are you planning to crash this time? Or is staying with us for a while the new term for indefinitely? I had to make them feel the sting. Tell me, Chad, what happened? Did that revolutionary crypto startup of yours finally go bust again? Or was it the NFT marketplace for artisanal dog sweaters? This time I lose track. The air in the room was so thick with hatred and exposed secrets I could barely breathe. The battle lines were drawn, and I had just fired the first, most satisfying shot. Chad and Alicia exchanged a look. A rapid, panicked flicker of understanding. Chad's smug, arrogant grin dissolved into a tight, angry line. He recovered first, forcing out a short, hollow laugh. Wow, sister-in-law, he snarled, trying to regain his footing. That's a little sensitive, don't you think? He picked an imaginary piece of lint off his designer polo shirt, playing nonchalant. It's not busted. It's called a transition phase. The market is just correcting. We just need a place to stand our ground for a few months. That's all. Alicia, seeing her useless husband flailing, immediately switched to her most effective and pathetic tactic, playing the victim. She ran to my mother, burying her face in Lorraine's shoulder. Mommy, she wailed, her voice instantly thick with fake tears. Are you going to let her talk to us like that? Look at her, Mom, she's being so mean. She pointed a shaking finger at me, her face a mask of childish, entitled betrayal. We're family, Imani. We're struggling, and you're just so rich working at your big fancy finance company. Why are you counting pennies with your own sister? You have this huge house all to yourself and your kids. The least you can do is share." My mother, Lorraine, reacted as if I had physically struck Alicia. Her head snapped toward me, her eyes blazing with a protective feral fury she had never once shown for me, her other daughter. "Imani!" she yelled, her voice vibrating with pure rage. Asterisk, you shut your mouth right now. Your sister is in trouble. You are going to help her. This house is more than big enough for everyone. God knows you've been living here for free long enough. The least you can do is share some of that space with your family. You ungrateful, selfish child. Living for free." The words landed one by one, like heavy stones dropped into a deep, dark well of pain. The sheer, staggering injustice of it, the colossal hypocrisy, sucked the last bit of air from my lungs. The entire living room seemed to fade into a dull, enraged roar. All I could hear, all I could feel, was that cruel, annihilating phrase, "living for free." The scar tissue over that old wound ripped wide open with a searing pain, exposing the raw nerve of my entire existence. I remembered the truth, and the memory only made the ice inside me form thicker and harder. They had sealed their fate with those 4 infuriating words. I will continue the script, ensuring Chapter 4 is approximately 1,000 words, maintains Imani's angry and painful internal monologue, and follows the narrative from the outline. Viral script. Kicked out for the golden grandchild. Chapter 4. The $500,000 lie approx. 1,000 words. Living for free. The words were a brand, searing the memory of that rainy, agonizing night 2 years ago onto my soul. It wasn't a calm evening like this one, polluted by self-serving family drama. It was 2:00 inches the morning, and a vicious thunderstorm was ripping Atlanta apart, mirroring the destruction they were bringing down on themselves. I was asleep, finally at rest, when my phone rang, the sound jarring and terrifying. It was my mother, and all I heard was hysterical, uncontrolled sobbing. Imani, you have to help us." My body, confused and still half asleep, tensed. "Mom, what's wrong? Where are you?" "We lost it, Imani," she cried, the words fragmented and thick with terror. "The bank, they took the house, they foreclosed. We're on the sidewalk, everything is on the sidewalk." My blood turned to ice. "What are you talking about? What foreclosure? You paid off your mortgage years ago." Then I heard my father's weak, defeated voice, heavy with shame. "It was Chad, honey," he mumbled, giving voice to the parasite that had devoured their lives. "That new business, that crypto mining thing, we took out a second mortgage to help him. We gave him our retirement." The line went quiet, filled only by my mother's wretched sobs and the howling wind, a soundtrack to their complete financial annihilation. They had handed over everything, their entire nest egg, the $500,000 earned over 40 years of miserable work, to a smooth-talking con artist with a good smile, all because he was married to their precious golden child. And now, they were homeless. I, the ungrateful daughter, the selfish child, got out of my warm bed. I got dressed and drove 3 hours in the torrential pouring rain to their old suburb, swallowing the sickening reality that I was the only one who would ever clean up their mess. I found them exactly where she'd said, sitting on a wet mattress on the curb, their few remaining belongings soaked under the flashing red and blue lights of a sheriff's car. They looked utterly, truly pathetic. I packed them and their few remaining dry possessions into my car. I drove them 3 hours back to my small 2-bedroom apartment in the city, the one I had earned, and I put them in my own bed while I took the couch. They never apologized. They never even truly thanked me. They just complained that my apartment was too small, their entitlement surviving even the trauma of homelessness. 1 week later, I liquidated everything. I took my entire 6-figure corporate bonus, the money I had been saving religiously for a down payment on my own dream home. I sold my stock options. I drained my savings. And I bought this house, this 6-bedroom, 5,000 square foot luxury home in Alpharetta. I bought it in cash. My name, and only my name, is on the deed. I bought it so my parents wouldn't be homeless. I bought it so my children could have a decent backyard. I bought it so my family, the one that had only ever taken from me, would have a safe, respectable place to land. And now, standing in the foyer of the house I owned, the house I paid for with my years of blood and sweat, I was being called ungrateful. I was being told I was living for free. The last, withered shred of daughterly obligation inside me finally snapped and died. The ice in my veins wasn't just cold, it was frozen solid, an unmovable foundation of pure, righteous fury. I took a deep, shuddering breath, locking the pain and the memory of that rainy night away. The ice inside me just got a little thicker, a little sharper, a little more deadly. I looked directly at my sister, Alicia, still clinging to my mother's arm like a pathetic leech. "I'm not rich, Alicia," I said, my voice cutting through her performance like a sheet of metal. "I'm just financially literate. You should try it sometime." That did it. Chad, who had been lazily enjoying the show, snapped. He couldn't stand the truth, couldn't tolerate me having the upper hand, especially not the financial one. He took 2 large, aggressive steps forward, using his height and bulk to try and loom over me. He smelled like cheap cologne and arrogant, unearned entitlement. "Listen here, Imani," he snarled, his voice dropping to a low, truly menacing growl. "You need to stop with the smart mouth, right now. You think you're better than us." He leaned in closer, his eyes venomous. "I know how you finance people are. All your little tricks, your creative accounting. We're family. I know you've been hiding money, moving things around." He smiled, a truly ugly, predatory expression. "How would you like a call to the IRS, huh? A full audit. I bet they'd love to see how you arranged all your little investments. You wouldn't want to lose this big fancy house, would you? You wouldn't want to lose your kids." Alicia, seeing her husband finally take charge with dark malice, lit up with glee. "Yeah, Imani, you should be nice to us, or you'll go to jail, and then maybe we'll be the ones to raise your kids in this house." She chimed in, her voice giddy with vicious excitement. I stared at them. I stared at this lazy, incompetent con man who couldn't successfully run a lemonade stand, and my sister, whose only skill was poisonous manipulation. They were threatening me, a chartered financial analyst, with the IRS, with losing my children, right here in the house I bought to save them. I looked up at Chad, who was still puffing out his chest, trying to stare me down, his face swollen with rage. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I just raised a single, calm eyebrow. "Are you threatening me, Chad?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet, slicing through the air. "Are you threatening a financial crimes investigation against me?" I paused, letting the magnitude of the question hang in the air, allowing their stupid confidence to waver. That's a bold move, especially in a house that, as of this moment, is recording audio on at least 4 different high-definition security cameras. The color drained instantly from Chad's face. Alicia's jaw dropped, her giddy smile evaporating. "What?" Alicia whispered, looking around wildly, frantically searching for the lie. My mother, Lorraine, scoffed, trying desperately to regain control. "She's lying. This house doesn't have any cameras. I live here. I would know." I gave her that same, cold, terrifying smile. "Oh, Mom," I said softly, the words dripping with contempt. "That's just what I let you think." The sheer, delicious panic in Chad's eyes was the only reward I needed. Before any of them could form another word, I turned my back on their exposed fear. I gently took Zoe's hand and Marcus's. "Come on, babies. Let's go to Mommy's office." I walked them calmly down the hall to my home office, the one room in the house they were never allowed to enter. I ushered my children inside. Then I shut the solid oak door behind us, the deadbolt clicking into place with a definitive, deafening snick. Outside, the inevitable screaming began. Alicia shrieking my name, Chad cursing and banging his fist on the heavy wood, and my mother yelling, "Imani, you open this door. You open it right now." I ignored it all. I sat down in my leather office chair, pulled my children onto my lap, and I finally, truly began to plan the complete annihilation of their lives. Inside my office, the world was suddenly, blessedly, calm. I had finally muted the chaos, the frantic banging and screaming now just a distant, pathetic static beyond the thick oak door. I settled my children onto the soft leather sofa, plugged them both into their iPads with headphones, and put on their favorite movie. They were scared, yes, but they were safe. For now, that crushing safety was all that mattered in this house of lies. I sat down in my high-backed leather chair, the command center of my financial life, my fortress of cold solitude. I am a financial analyst. I deal in numbers, in ruthless risk assessment, and in the absolute, unavoidable consequence of choices. Outside the thick oak door, the animal kingdom raged on, a sound I now simply filtered out. "Imani, you coward! You open this door. That was Chad, his voice cracking with impotent, predictable rage. Imani, stop this. Stop being such a child. That was Alicia, her shriek hitting a writer, painful, needy octave. And loudest of all, most disgusting of all, my mother. Imani Davis, you unlock this door. I am your mother. You will not disrespect me in my own house. The audacity of the final lie fueled the fire in my soul. I ignored them, every useless word of their entitled screaming. I picked up my phone, my fingers steady and cold. I didn't call the police yet. That was the final, definitive step. I didn't call my lawyer. That was the step before the police. I scrolled through my contacts and pressed a name. David. He was my property manager, privy to the precise painful mechanism of my parents' continued delusion. The phone rang once. David speaking. David, it's Imani Davis. How are you? My voice was calm, crisp, the cold, professional voice I used to close multi-million-dollar deals without blinking. Imani, I'm good. Always good. What can I do for you? Are we ready to pull the trigger on selling that Alpharetta property? He asked. I leaned back in my ready chair, glancing at the locked door that still vibrated with the remnants of their pathetic pounding. Listen, David, I said, my voice perfectly level, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. There's been a slight change of plans, a material development. We're not selling the Alpharetta house anymore. He sounded momentarily disappointed. Oh, okay. Holding on to it? Instead, I continued, cutting him off. I need you to do something for me immediately. I need you to pull up a file. It should be from 2 years ago. It's a rent-to-own agreement, the one I drafted for my parents. David laughed, confirming the painful history. Ah, yes, I remember that. You wanted to give them peace of mind. Very generous. What about it? Generous. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. I need you to email me a digital copy of the fully executed contract, right now. I want the one with both Joseph and Lorraine Davis's signatures, I instructed, my mind racing ahead. And David, before you send it, please highlight Section 12, Subsection B, the guest and occupancy clause. There was a pause on his end, a moment of professional curiosity mixed with concern. Imani, is everything all right? I looked at my children, safe under their blankets, completely lost in their movie, and felt the sudden surge of maternal protection that was the true core of this war. Everything is just business, David. As always. Please send that email immediately. I'd appreciate it. You got it. It's on its way. I hung up the phone. The banging on the door had now turned into a furious, frantic, rhythmic pounding. They were losing their minds, baffled and enraged by my silence, convinced they were winning this siege. The threats escalated, showing the true, shallow nature of their desires. Imani, I'm not playing with you. You think you can just hide in there? You think you're in charge? My mother's voice was raw, hysterical, moving from pure rage straight to blinding panic. Then came the absolute nadir of her cruelty. Imani, give me your credit card. I'm serious. You have to give it to me right now. I have to order that new king-size mattress for Leo. The one your daughter Zoe had is old and it's disgusting. I am not letting my precious grandbaby sleep on that filthy thing. Her words, meant to be the final, crushing insult, barely even registered as pain. They were just more fuel for the devastating fire I was about to light. I sat there, my eyes glued to my laptop, and then I saw it. A single, beautiful ping. A new email. Subject: Alpharetta Agreement. Highlighted. A slow, cold, utterly satisfying smile spread across my face. It was time. I stood up, straightened the blazer they accused me of wearing with undeserved pride, and walked toward the door. The battle of words was over. The execution was about to begin. I stood at the door, the shouting having stopped, replaced by a tense, expectant silence. They were waiting for my surrender. They were about to receive their eviction notice. I took one final, deep breath. My hand was perfectly steady as I reached for the deadbolt. I turned the lock. The click was loud, final, and absolute. I pulled the heavy oak door inward, letting them all stumble forward, a wall of suffocating resentment. My mother, Lorraine, surged forward, her face vibrating with impotent fury. Behind her, Alicia's eyes were narrowed to slits. Chad puffed out his chest, trying to look menacing, and my father, Joe, hovered in the back, his face a mask of pale, shameful cowardice. They were all there, grim-faced, demanding my surrender, demanding my credit card for their precious Leo's new mattress. It's about time. Have you lost your mind? Hiding in there? Now give me your credit card. I have to order that mattress for Leo before the delivery window closes. I didn't move. I stood my ground, my children safe behind me, and looked at her, my face calm, my voice cold, decisive. No, Mom. I will not be paying for that mattress. Lorraine stopped dead. What? What did you just say to me? She looked at me as if I had just grown a second head, the audacity of my defiance unimaginable. You dare to defy me in my own house after everything I cut her off. My voice not loud, but so sharp, so lethal. It silenced the entire room, stopping her monologue of entitlement cold. Stop, just stop. This is not your house, and it has never been your house. The silence that followed was absolute, terrifying. Alicia's jaw dropped. Chad looked momentarily stunned. My father flinched as if I had physically struck him. Their reign of terror was officially over. My father was the first to weakly, pathetically break the heavy silence. Imani, honey, what are you saying? He stammered, his voice weak and placating, desperately trying to sweep the truth under the rug. As always, you know your mother and I. This is our home. I turned my cold, disgusted gaze directly on him. Is it? I asked, the question slicing through his manufactured calm. He immediately looked away, the pathetic coward unable to meet my eyes. What did you do, Dad? What did you both do? I drove the knife in, demanding he acknowledge the rot. You lost your home. You lost the house I grew up in. You lost everything. I turned back to my mother, Lorraine, whose face was now pale with a new, dawning, terrifying horror. You lost your house. You were foreclosed on. And I, your selfish, ungrateful daughter, I bought this one. I let the magnitude of the revelation hang heavy in the air, allowing the shame to suffocate them. I bought this 6-bedroom, 5,000 square foot house with my money. My bonus, the money I earned. And for 2 years, I have let you live in it for zero. Not one single rent check, not one utility bill paid by you. I let you live here for free. Do you remember? I asked, my voice deadly quiet, cutting through the memory of their arrogance. The rent-to-own contract I had you sign 2 years. The memory was so clear it burned. It wasn't a triumphant day when I helped them, but a deeply humiliating one. I remembered driving to the miserable, gray apartment complex they had been forced to rent after the foreclosure. The entire complex stank of stale cigarettes and boiled cabbage. They were huddled on a stained sofa, the fight completely gone out of them, surrounded by the pathetic few possessions the bank hadn't seized. My father stared at the floor, shame radiating off him in waves. Even then, my mother, Lorraine, was trying desperately to spin it. It's just a temporary setback, she'd muttered, wringing her hands. That Chad, he's a good boy. He just has terrible luck. That crypto miner was a brilliant idea. The market just turned. I didn't have the heart then to tell her the brutal truth. Chad wasn't unlucky. He was an incompetent predator who had cold-heartedly devoured their entire life savings. I had the file in my briefcase, the deed, the title, all safely in. My name. And I had the other document, the meticulously drafted legal fiction from my lawyer. I should have told them the brutal, undeniable truth then and there. I should have laid down the law, asserting, this is my house, and these are my rules. But I couldn't, because I was still that pathetic 8-year-old girl on the porch, clutching my scholarship, desperately begging for one word of approval from my cold, cruel mother. So, I lied. I, a senior financial analyst who lived by numbers and brutal facts, lied to my own parents to protect their fragile, pathetic pride. I remembered my own weak words. Mom, Dad, I found a solution. It's a special program my company offers. A kind of executive rent-to-own plan. It's complicated, but it's a way for me to invest, and it helps you get back on your feet. My mother's eyes had instantly lit up, not with gratitude, but with the arrogant, sickening glow of regained status. Oh, a rent-to-own. Well, that's sensible. Yes, we can. Manage that. My father just nodded, relieved he didn't have to face the ugly truth. That's good, Imani. That's real good of you. I pushed the document across the table. It's just a formality for my company's records. A lease agreement, basically. It just states that you're the residents. It's for tax purposes. Just sign here and here. And like the self-absorbed fools they were, they signed without reading a single word. They signed their names on the signature lines right below the clearly printed devastating words, Tenant Joseph Davis and Tenant Lorraine Davis. I had done it to be kind. I had done it to spare their pathetic feelings. I had been a fool. I had been so disgustingly stupid, so desperately starved for their non-existent love, that I had enabled their monstrous delusion. I had given them the power to believe they were still in charge, still the owners of my life. And now, 2 years later, that treacherous, misused kindness was being thrown back in my face. The exact reason my children were shivering like puppies in a freezing basement. I looked back at my mother, who was still sputtering, clinging desperately to the convenient lie I had told her. That was for your taxes, Amani. You said so yourself. It was just paperwork for your company. Alicia and Chad stared at each other, their faces pale with a sudden, sick understanding. The implications of my words were dawning on them, but in two sickeningly different ways. Alicia, true to her core, went straight to ugly jealousy. Her voice was a choked, venomous whisper. You own this house? This whole entire house? You're that rich? You've been lying to us all this time. Her rage wasn't about the betrayal. It was about the power I had that she didn't know about. The power that should, in her entitled mind, have belonged to her. Chad's reaction, the predator's reaction, was different, calculated, and far more dangerous. He wasn't jealous. He was instantly assessing the damage. I could literally see the dirty gears turning in his conniving mind. His eyes darted around the expensive living room, reassessing the entire scene. He wasn't just a guest anymore. He was a trespasser on someone else's absolute property. Wait, he stammered, holding up a greasy hand. It's in your name? Just yours? Not tied to your parents' assets at all? I ignored them both and kept my cold eyes locked solely on my mother. She was still clinging desperately to the lie I had foolishly told her 2 years ago, to protect her fragile, non-existent honor. No, Mom, I said, my voice flat, absolute, and devoid of any emotion. It wasn't for my taxes. It wasn't a special program. It was a standard month-to-month residential tenancy agreement, the kind governed by the laws of the state of Georgia. I turned my back on their shocked, crumpled faces and walked back to my desk, the nerve center of my life. I sat down in my chair, the screaming, the threats, the banging, all of it suddenly seeming so pathetic, so distant. They had been banging on the door of a house that wasn't even theirs. The contract was the only truth that mattered now. I looked at my laptop screen, that cold, analytical tool of my professional life, and right on cue, as if summoned by the sheer power of my focused rage, a small notification popped up in the corner. Ping. A new email had arrived. The subject line, a beacon of pure, undeniable truth. Read, Alpharetta Agreement, highlighted. Thank you, David, I whispered to myself, a grim satisfaction settling in my chest. I clicked the email open. I opened the PDF attachment, and there it was, laid bare in beautiful, terrifying black and white. My lawyer had done an excellent job, meticulously drafting the document that was now their coffin. I spun the large, 32-inch monitor on my desk around so that it faced the doorway, the precise spot where my entire stunned, paralyzed family was still standing. The PDF file was displayed in stark, overwhelming full-screen mode. You don't have to take my word for it, I said, my voice echoing in the quiet office, the sound of my certainty absolute. You can read it for yourselves. I pointed a steady finger to the top of the document. Page 1, Section 1, Parties to the Agreement. I read the devastating words aloud for them, letting the truth sink into their entitled minds. This agreement is made between the following parties. Landlord Amani K. Davis. Then, I pointed to the line directly below it, delivering the final crushing blow. And Tenant Joseph R. Davis. Tenant Lorraine M. Davis. I scrolled to the last page, displaying their digital signatures, time-stamped and legally binding, a permanent record of the contract they never bothered to read. I looked up at my mother, her face ashen, white as a sheet. She looked like she couldn't breathe, suffocating on the exposure. You are my tenants, Mom, I said, my voice utterly final, and I am your landlord. I let the image of their signatures hang in the air for a moment, a portrait of their shame. My mother's hand was over her mouth, a silent gasp. My father just stared, his face a monument to utter defeat. You see, I said, my voice calm and analytical, like a surgeon preparing to cut out a deep, festering infection. I'm a financial analyst. I deal in risk mitigation, and I knew exactly who I was dealing with when I bought this house. I scrolled the PDF document up from the signature page. You're both so busy being outraged you never bothered to read the document you signed. But that's okay. I'm a professional. I read everything. And I remember one section in particular. I continued, savoring the moment of absolute control. My mouse moved across the screen. I clicked. The document zoomed in, highlighting a specific block of terrifying text. The bright yellow highlight from my property manager, David, was practically glowing with the power it held. Here it is, I said. Let me read it aloud for you just so there's no confusion. I cleared my throat and read slowly, deliberately, letting every single word crash down on them like a heavy, final hammer blow. Section 12, subsection B, entitled Guest and Occupancy Clause. I paused, watching Chad's eyes glue themselves to the screen. He, the supposed businessman, knew exactly what a contract clause meant. It states, and I quote, "The tenant agrees not to allow any other persons, individuals, or parties to occupy the premises for a period exceeding 48 hours without the express written consent of the landlord Imani K. Davis." I let that hang there, the silence suddenly deafening. I don't recall signing any consent forms for Alicia, Chad, and Leo to move in. Do you? My mother just gaped, speechless. But it gets better, I said, moving my mouse to the next highlighted sentence, delivering the fatal wound to her maternal pride. It continues, furthermore, the tenant agrees not to alter, modify, redecorate, or change the primary living spaces of any occupants listed as residents herein, specifically the minor dependents of the landlord, Zoe Davis and Marcus Davises. I leaned back in my chair, the pure, cold satisfaction surging through my veins. It's all right here in plain English. Mom, you didn't just move your other daughter and her husband in. You displaced my children. You kicked them out of their designated, legally protected rooms. I looked up from the screen, my eyes sweeping slowly over their terrified, shattered faces one by one. Which means, I said, my voice dropping to an icy whisper, filled with absolute finality. As of approximately 9 this morning when you moved my children's beds to the basement, you, Mom, and you, Dad, are in serious, material, and incurable breach of this contract. The silence in the office was absolute, crushing. It was so quiet I could hear the faint, cold hum of the computer's cooling fan. I could hear my son, oblivious in his movie, whisper something about his game to his sister. Outside my office, in the hallway, the world had truly stopped. My mother's face had gone from white to a sickly, mottled gray. Her mouth was open, but no sound was coming out. She looked like a fish suffocating on dry air. My father, Joe, just leaned back against the doorframe, his hand over his heart, and looked utterly, completely defeated. A pathetic, crumbled figure. But Alicia and Chad, the true predators, their reactions were different, darker. Alicia, the golden child, was the first to find her voice, and it was vibrating not with fear, but with pure, unadulterated envy. You, she stammered, pointing a shaking, venomous finger at me. You did lie. You lied to all of us. You let us think you were just like us. You bought this entire house. You're that rich. You've been hiding this all this time. Her voice was a shriek of pure, selfish rage. She wasn't angry about the contract. She was furiously angry that I had a power she didn't know about. Angry that the sister she had always looked down on was, in fact, the one holding every single card. Chad, however, was worse. His face wasn't angry or jealous. It was coldly, clinically calculating. His eyes, which had been wide with shock, suddenly narrowed, assessing the enormous financial asset before him. He was looking at me not as family, but as a mark, a problem, a financial puzzle he was desperately trying to solve. Wait a minute, he said, his voice low and assessing, the gears of his greedy mind spinning wildly. Hold on. This house, it's in her name, just hers? He looked at my parents, realizing the horrifying truth. It's not tied to your assets. It wasn't part of any inheritance or family trust. It's 100% solely her personal property. He looked back at me, a strange, terrifying, hungry light in his eyes, seeing not a sister-in-law, but a massive, lucrative target. And he was trying to figure out the angle, the way to steal it all. As we all stood there, frozen in the grotesque tableau of our new reality, staring at the damning contract on my monitor, a new sound cut through the heavy silence. The doorbell. It rang loud and insistent, a perfectly normal, innocent sound that was so utterly out of place it felt like a gunshot in the grand foyer. Alicia flinched violently. My father looked momentarily relieved for the terrifying interruption. But my mother and Chad were still paralyzed, utterly consumed by the words breach of contract. I, however, was not paralyzed. I took a deep, steadying breath. "Excuse me," I said, my voice crisp and professional. The voice of pure authority. I walked out of my office, deliberately brushing past my mother's shoulder as if she were a piece of worthless furniture I was avoiding. I left them all standing there in the hallway, staring helplessly at the glowing monitor that displayed their shame. My children, Zoe and Marcus, hearing the bell, crept out of the office, their small faces pale with confusion and fear. I walked to the front door, feeling the icy control solidify in my core. I opened the heavy oak door. 2 men in bright red company polos were standing on my porch. Behind them, on a dolly, was a massive, hideous king-sized mattress, wrapped tight in thick plastic. The lead delivery man, clipboard in hand, gave a practiced smile. "Good evening, ma'am. We have a delivery for a Mrs. Lorraine Davis." "I am Lorraine Davis." My mother's voice shrieked instantly from behind me. She shoved past me, desperate to stand in the doorway, frantically trying to reclaim her lost authority in front of strangers. "That's my mattress. Bring it in." The delivery man looked from her frantic, wild-eyed face to my calm, measured expression. Confused by the raw, crackling tension, he checked his clipboard. "Okay, ma'am. This is a COD order. 1 Royal Legacy king-size mattress. The total with delivery and taxes comes to $3,274. $3,000. $3,000 for her precious golden grandson." Meanwhile, my own children were freezing in the basement on a musty old cot. The sheer, blazing entitlement of it, the horrifying audacity, stole my breath away, replacing it with pure, focused, annihilating rage. Lorraine, still completely disconnected from the catastrophic new reality I had just unveiled, didn't even blink. She was still playing the role of the queen of this castle. She didn't have her purse. She didn't have a credit card. She just pointed a sharp, demanding finger directly at me. "Imani, pay the man." She didn't ask. She commanded. She genuinely, disgustingly believed that even after everything I had just revealed, I would simply fall back in line, that her selfish will was still the law in my home. This was the moment, the pivot. The entire audience, Alicia, Chad, my father, my children, and this essential stranger, the delivery man, were watching. This stranger was the first member of the public, the outside world, to witness the installation of the New World Order. I gave a small, polite, professional smile. I stepped forward, past my mother, standing directly in the doorway, completely blocking the entrance and the delivery. I looked the delivery man directly in the eye, my voice filled with the kind of pleasant, helpful tone I used with corporate clients, right before delivering bad news. "Excuse me, sir," I said, my voice ringing with crystalline clarity. "I'm so sorry, but there has been a major misunderstanding here." The delivery man's smile faltered, confused. "A misunderstanding, ma'am?" "Yes," I said, nodding calmly. I gestured politely toward my mother, who was staring at me with a look of pure, venomous confusion. "This woman, Mrs. Davis, is not the homeowner. She has no authority to order anything to this address." "Imani," my mother hissed, her voice low and dangerous, finally realizing the public humiliation I was inflicting. "What are you doing? Stop this." "Nonsense." I continued to look at the delivery man, my expression one of calm, detached, professional concern. "I am the homeowner, Imani Davis. This woman is a tenant, a long-term resident, and unfortunately, she is in serious violation of her lease agreement." The delivery man's eyes went wide with shock and alarm. This was far more domestic drama than he was paid to deal with, and he was suddenly desperate to be anywhere else. Okay, ma'am. Look, I just need to get paid, and I understand that," I said, my voice still kind, yet firm. "But you need to understand that this person," I gestured to my mother again, cementing her status as an unauthorized party, "has no financial authority in this house. She will not be paying you because she has no money, and I will not be paying you because I did not authorize this purchase." You! My mother sputtered, her face turning a deep, blotchy, ugly shade of crimson. She was finally realizing the true, devastating horror of what I was doing. I was not just winning the argument. I was airing her dirty laundry, taking her private family power and exposing it as a complete, humiliating fraud in front of a working-class stranger. So, I'm afraid, I continued, my voice gaining momentum, that you will have to take the mattress back. No, Lorraine shrieked, lunging forward, a primal animal sound of loss. That's my mattress. I ordered it, Amani. You will pay him. You will not do this to me. The delivery man and his partner took a half step back, visibly startled by her hysterical outburst. I held my ground, unmoving, completely unfeeling. My voice was no longer pleasant. It was hard, cold, absolute ice. Sir, this woman is a tenant who is in the process of being evicted for cause. She is trespassing. She has no authority here. Please remove the unauthorized item from my property. Evicted. Trespassing. I used the words deliberately, letting them land like stones. The delivery man, now looking, genuinely horrified and alarmed, threw up his hands. No problem, ma'am. No problem at all. You got it. He was done. This was not a world he wanted any part of. He nodded to his partner. All right, pull it back. No payment, no delivery. Let's go. No! My mother screamed, a wretched broken sound. She actually tried to claw and grab the mattress as they began to roll it back toward the truck. You can't. That's for my grandson, Amani. The two men, professional to the end, expertly maneuvered the massive, unwanted mattress off the porch, down the steps, and back onto the truck's hydraulic lift. My mother stood in the open doorway, her entire body shaking, her hands clenched into useless, pathetic fists. She was speechless, watching her power, her authority, her $3,274 symbol of status, her last desperate attempt at relevance, being loaded onto a truck and driven away, dissolving into nothing. The delivery man gave me one last hurried, terrified nod. He practically jogged back to the truck, slammed the door shut, and they drove off, fleeing the scene of my absolute domestic warfare. The night was suddenly quiet again, the only sound the distant rumble of the truck's engine fading down the street. I stood in the heavy silence for a long moment, savoring the chilling satisfaction of watching their pathetic, entitled symbol of status dissolve into nothing. Then, I calmly closed the front door. The click of the lock echoed in the grand foyer, a sound of definitive finality. I turned around. My father had shrunk back into the deepest shadows of the hallway. Alicia and Chad were just staring, their faces a mixture of horror and cold disbelief. My mother, Lorraine, was still standing by the door, her back to me, and I could see her entire body trembling. I watched her, waiting for the inevitable explosion. She turned around very slowly, her face no longer red with fury, but a pale, terrifying, waxy white. Her eyes were not just angry, they were filled with a humiliation so profound, so absolute, it looked like pure, concentrated hatred. When she finally spoke, it was not a yell. It was a low, guttural, animalistic sound of pure wounded pride. How dare you? And then the predictable narcissistic explosion. Imani, she screamed, her voice breaking on a high, hysterical note. How dare you? How dare you humiliate me in my own home in front of strangers? You made me look like nothing, like trash. She was sobbing now, but they were not tears of pain or remorse. They were tears of pure, unadulterated, exposed rage. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I just looked at her, my face as cold and still as a frozen lake. I did? I asked, my voice flat, challenging her wretched, self-pitying performance. I humiliated you? You took my 8- and 10-year-old children, your grandchildren, and you threw their belongings into a cold, damp basement. You made them feel like trash. You made them feel like nothing. You didn't care about their humiliation. You only care about yours. Now you know exactly how it feels. Welcome to the club, Mom. My mother's face crumpled, but it wasn't the cathartic breakdown of someone who finally understood the pain they had caused. It was the public, theatrical collapse of a narcissist who had just been checkmated in front of an audience. Her power, built on the fragile foundation of my lifelong silence and misplaced guilt, had just been publicly demolished. I had utterly humiliated her. I had stripped away her status. In our world, in the affluent, tightly knit African-American community of Alpharetta, public perception wasn't just important, it was everything. She knew she had lost complete control of the situation inside this house. The contract was undeniable. The deed was mine. She couldn't bully me. She couldn't command me. So, defeated on this immediate battlefield, She instantly escalated the war to a new, desperate level. She reached for her ultimate, most poisonous weapon, the community. Her body was still shaking with uncontrolled rage, but her hands as they reached for her iPhone were terrifyingly steady. She scrolled through her contacts, her thumb jabbing at the screen. She knew exactly who to call to deploy the nuclear option. She didn't call the police. She called someone far more powerful, far more judgmental. Aunt Clara. Aunt Clara, the 70-year-old matriarch of the First Baptist Church, the community's unofficial historian and chief information officer. The woman whose sanctimonious opinion could make or break a family's reputation before Sunday service was even over. My mother pressed the phone to her ear, and in an instant, her entire demeanor shifted. The raw, blinding rage vanished, replaced by the most convincing, disgusting performance of her entire life. Her voice, when she spoke, was a broken, trembling, tear-soaked whisper. "Clara," she choked out. "Oh, Clara, it's me. It's Lorraine. Oh God, Clara, I'm so scared. I don't know what to do." Alicia and Chad, who had been watching in stunned, petrified silence, instantly understood this sick, manipulative play. Alicia's eyes lit up with malicious recognition. Chad's tense shoulders relaxed, and he leaned against the wall with a smug smirk, ready to watch the moral authority of the church obliterate me. My mother sank down onto the bottom stair, assuming the perfect, pitiful portrait of the broken, abused victim. It's Amani," she sobbed into the phone. She's throwing us out. She's throwing her father and me out onto the street right now. Yes, just because Alicia and the baby came to stay. She said we can't be here." My father, Joe, just watched, his face pale, opening his mouth to protest the disgusting lie, then closing it and turning his eyes to the floor. His silence was his co-signature on the smear campaign. Lorraine was just getting warmed up. This was her masterpiece of emotional destruction. "She's rich now, Clara. She's so rich from that big finance job, and she's forgotten where she came from. She's lost her soul. She's got us trapped here," she's saying. "She's saying this isn't even our house." She paused, listening, letting the venomous poison seep through the phone line. She tricked us," my mother wailed, her voice rising in manufactured hysteria. We're old, Clara. We didn't know what we were signing. We can't read all that legal print. We trusted her. We trusted our own daughter. And she tricked us out of our home. She's accusing Joe and me of being squatters. It was brilliant in its monstrous cruelty. She wasn't just a mother in a petty dispute. She was the innocent victim of elder abuse. She was the victim of a rich, educated child preying on her simple, God-fearing parents. She had perfectly framed the entire narrative for maximum, crushing community outrage. "Yes, Alicia and Chad are here. They have nowhere else to go. And she wants to put them on the street too, with a baby. Oh, Clara, please. Can you please call Pastor John? Can you tell him he has to talk to her? He has to make her see the sin she is committing. Please, I'm so scared of what she'll do to us." She hung up the phone. The theatrical sobbing stopped instantly. The transformation was chilling, sickening. She looked up at me, her eyes dry, cold, and utterly triumphant. She had just unleashed the nuclear option. She had just sicked the entire, crushing moral authority of our community on me. She, Alicia, and Chad stood there, a united front, their faces smug, patiently waiting for my immediate public surrender. They knew I was a respected member of that church, on the finance committee. They knew my reputation mattered more than anything. They didn't have to wait long, 10 agonizing minutes. My phone, sitting innocently on the foyer's console table, lit up. The caller ID read, "Aunt Clara." I ignored it. It immediately rang again. "Aunt Clara." I ignored it. A new call came in. "Deacon Harris." I ignored that too. A text message flashed from my cousin. "Amani, what is going on? Aunt Clara is saying you're kicking Uncle Joe and Aunt Lorraine out." I ignored that pathetic plea for information. Then, the final call. The one I knew I couldn't ignore. The one they were all waiting for. The caller ID read, "Pastor John." I looked at my mother. Her smile was one of pure, venomous, absolute victory. "You going to answer that, Amani?" she whispered, her voice laced with chilling malice. "Or are you going to disrespect your pastor too?" I picked up the phone, my hand steady, feeling the concentrated, sickening weight of their victory hanging on my next action. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the moral blackmail, and I pressed the speakerphone button. "Imani Davis speaking," I said, my voice calm, professional, and completely devoid of the panic they craved. "Sister Imani." His voice boomed through the foyer, thick with authority and judgment. It was the voice that delivered fire and brimstone sermons every Sunday, a voice that commanded fear and respect in our insular community. "Pastor John, good evening," I replied, maintaining a calm, even tone. "Imani, I will not waste time," he said, his tone heavy with righteous disappointment. "I have just received a most disturbing call from Sister Clara. She tells me she spoke with your mother, Lorraine. She tells me you are putting your own parents out of their home, that you are turning your back on your sister and her family in their time of need." My mother, Alicia, and Chad stood there, gorging themselves on the condemnation. My mother was actually dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue, putting on a sickening show for my father, playing the abused victim to perfection. "Imani," the pastor continued, his voice heavy, "this is not who we are. This is not how we as a community treat our elders. The Bible is not ambiguous on this. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land. It does not say, honor them only when it is convenient. It does not say, honor them until they cost you money. It is a commandment, child." He sighed, a sound of deep theatrical pastoral weariness. "You are a pillar of this community, Imani, a leader. You are on my finance committee. What will people think? What shadow does this cast upon our church, upon the legacy of your family? You are a successful woman. The Lord has blessed you, and you are using that blessing to shame your own blood. You cannot let them be homeless, Imani. Whatever this squabble is about, you must end it. You must forgive. You must do the right thing. Am I understood?" The weight of his words filled the room, crushing and undeniable. This was the checkmate, the moment my mother believed I could not possibly survive. I was being spiritually and socially blackmailed, ordered to stand, down by the highest moral authority we knew. I looked at my mother's triumphant, venomous smile. I looked at Alicia's smug smirk. I looked at Chad, who looked bored, already counting the money he would soon be getting when I inevitably surrendered. And then, I spoke. My voice was as calm and clear as a winter morning, but it was filled with pure, uncompromising steel. "Good evening, Pastor John. Thank you for your call. I respect you, and I respect the Word of God, and I agree, the Bible is very clear." The smiles on their faces faltered instantly. This was not the sound of surrender. "You quoted Exodus, Pastor, and you are right. We must honor our parents. But the Bible also teaches us, in Ephesians, 'Fathers, provoke not your children to wrath.' It teaches us that there is righteous anger." "Imani," the pastor began, a note of warning in his voice, but I kept going, the words pouring out, unstoppable. "You were told a story, Pastor. Now I will tell you the truth. You were told I am kicking my parents out. The truth is, my parents are kicking my children out. My 8 and 10-year-old children, their own grandchildren." The silence on the other end of the phone was sudden, stark, devastating. "While I was at work today, Pastor," I continued, my voice starting to fill with the cold, hard anger I had been suppressing for hours, "my mother, Lorraine, took my children's beds, their clothes, and their toys, and she threw them into a cold, damp, unfinished basement. Why? So her golden child, my sister Alicia, and her husband Chad, could have my children's bedrooms, so their precious grandson could have the best room." I looked at my mother. Her face was frozen, the smugness completely gone. "Is that honoring your family, Pastor?" I asked, the question ringing with accusation. "Is that what the legacy of this community is, sacrificing the innocent for the favored?" Lorraine did not mention this," the pastor stammered, his authority faltering. "No, I'm sure she didn't," I replied, my voice dripping with cold contempt. "She also didn't mention that this house, the one she's accusing me of stealing, is my house. I bought it with my own money after they lost their house because they gave their entire $500,000 retirement fund to my brother-in-law, Chad, for a fraudulent crypto mining scheme." Chad flinched, visibly recoiling at the exposed crime. "I bought this house to save them from being homeless, Pastor," I said, my voice rising, vibrating with righteous anger. "I lied to them. I told them it was a rent to own to protect their pathetic pride. I let them live here for 2 years for free. I paid every bill, and their thank you is to violate the tenancy agreement I had them sign. Their thank you is to treat my children like garbage. Their thank you is to call our church and lie to paint me as the villain, to perform as the victim in a crisis they themselves created. I was shaking now, not from fear, but from pure, unfiltered, glorious, righteous fury. So yes, Pastor, I agree. We must honor our parents. But my first duty as a mother is to protect my children. And I will not allow them to be emotionally and physically abused by anyone, even my own mother. The foyer was a tomb. No one moved. No one breathed. The only sound was the voice on the speakerphone. Pastor John, who was no fool, cleared his throat. His tone completely changed. The judgment was gone. The fire was extinguished. He just sounded tired, defeated by the complexity of the rot I had just exposed. Sister Amani, I see. I was not given all the facts. This is a family matter. A deeply complicated family matter. I will pray for all of you. I will pray for wisdom. Good night, Sister Imani. And he hung up. He didn't defend my mother. He didn't quote any more scripture. He retreated. I looked at my mother. Her face was a terrifying mask of white-hot, exposed rage. Her entire plan, her brilliant, devastating flanking maneuver, had just been vaporized in front of her entire family. She had lost. She had been publicly, utterly defeated, not just by me, but by the very moral authority she had tried to weaponize against me. She was trembling, a pitiful, pathetic spectacle of wounded pride. You, she whispered, the words choked with disbelief and pure spite. You aired our dirty laundry to the pastor. You shamed me. You shamed this family in front of God. Her focus, as always, was only on the public disgrace, never on the vicious cruelty she had inflicted on my children. Chad, however, was no longer smiling. His face was dark, the casual smugness of the con artist gone, replaced by something hard and dangerously calculated. He had just heard me tell the pastor of the largest church in Atlanta that he was a fraud who had stolen $500,000. I hadn't just embarrassed my mother, I had definitively exposed him. He stepped forward, pushing past a stunned, silent Alicia. He stood directly in front of me, his face inches from mine, his cheap cologne and noxious entitlement overwhelming my senses. All right, you bitch, he snarled, his voice a low, threatening growl. You want to play with contracts? You want to talk about the law? He smiled, a humorless, terrifying, predatory expression. Okay, let's play. You think you're smart with your little lease. But I know the law too. I know about squatters' rights. I know about tenant protections. And I know about the IRS. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Chad's threat hung in the air, thick and toxic. He was actually threatening to call the IRS, to take my children, all to save his own miserable skin and get his hands on my property. My sister, Alicia, seeing her husband taking this dark, aggressive turn, didn't back down. She lit up. He's right, Imani, she said, her voice giddy with sudden vicious excitement. Go ahead and call them, Chad. She probably is a criminal. You're going to go to jail, Imani. And don't you worry about Zoe and Marcus. She smiled, a truly grotesque, evil expression. We'll take good care of them for you, right here in this big, beautiful house. My mother and father just stood there, watching this disgusting scene unfold. They said nothing. They didn't defend me. They didn't tell Chad he was wrong. They were just watching, silently endorsing the threat to my children. I looked at Chad's snarling face, at Alicia's gleeful one, at my mother's stunned, silent betrayal. I didn't say a word. I turned my back on all of them, walking out of my office, past my children who were watching from the doorway, their eyes wide and terrified. I walked into the very center of the grand living room. What's wrong, Imani? Chad taunted from behind me, his voice oozing false victory. Finally scared? Finally realizing you messed with the wrong people? I stopped in front of the massive 80-inch smart television mounted on the wall. The same television my mother had ordered for Leo, but which I had actually bought. I picked up the remote. I pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life. I swiped on my phone, connecting it instantly to the television's screen mirroring function. My phone's home screen appeared on the giant TV. You're threatening me with tax fraud, Chad? I asked, my voice echoing slightly in the large room, cold and utterly mocking. Is this the fraud you were talking about? My thumb moved to a file, an audio file. You remember when I mentioned the cameras, Chad? I asked, turning to look at him, enjoying the rigid fear seizing his face. The ones my mother swore didn't exist? I lied. I let her believe they weren't real. But I installed them 2 years ago, right after your last visit. The one where my good cashmere coat and $2,000 in cash disappeared from my office. Chad's face went rigid, his eyes wide with a dawning, frantic comprehension. This one, I said, my voice, cutting him off, is from the hidden camera in my office. The one with the audio recording. I believe this is your voice from last week, wasn't it? I pressed play. A recording, crystal clear and horrifying, filled the living room. It was Chad's voice, but not the loud, boisterous one he used with us. This was a low, conspiratorial whisper. Audio file. Chad's voice. Look, I don't care how you do it. I just need you to clean it. It's another $250,000. Yeah. In a separate retirement annuity my idiot father-in-law forgot he had. I just need to move it. Audio file. Strange man's voice. $250K is a lot to make disappear, Mr. Miller. It's risky. What about your sister-in-law, the one in finance? Won't she spot a transfer that big? Audio file. Chad's voice. She's the reason I'm calling you. She'll spot it if it's a simple transfer. That's what I'm paying you for. You have to make it look like a legitimate bad investment. A fund that went bust. Something legal. Can you do that or not? I pressed pause. The color had drained from Chad's face. He was white, terrified. Alicia looked like she was going to vomit. That was your call from last week, Chad? I said, my voice dangerously calm, utterly annihilating his confidence. To your financial advisor in the Cayman Islands? You weren't just here to crash. You were here to steal the last $250,000 my parents had to their names. The money I had found and secured for them after you stole the first $500,000. My father made a small, choking sound. The agony of the second, deeper betrayal finally piercing his denial. The annuity? My railroad pension. I wasn't finished. But that's just business, right, Chad? This next one, this one is personal. I swiped on my phone. The audio file disappeared, replaced by a devastating video file. I pressed play. The screen lit up with a video of the living room. This living room. The timestamp in the corner read 10:30 a.m. this morning while it was at work. The video showed Alicia and Chad drinking mimosas on my sofa. Video. Alicia. Did you talk to her? Is she doing it? Video. Chad. Of course. The old woman will do whatever I say. She's moving the kids' stuff to the basement right now. She's all fired up about Leo being the real grandson. Pathetic. Video. Alicia. Good God, I am so sick of Imani and her 2 perfect little brats. It's time they learned their place. My children, Zoe and Marcus, were standing in the hallway, listening. They heard it. They heard their aunt's cruel, venomous voice. Zoe's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a terrified cry. The video wasn't over. Video. Alicia laughing. Just hurry up and get that last bit of money, Chad. Get it cleaned and get it moved. The second that money hits our offshore account, we are gone. We're taking Leo and we are gone. I am so sick of this family. I'm sick of the old lady and her drama. And I am so sick of that holier-than-thou judgmental bitch Manny. I pressed stop. The video froze on Alicia's laughing, contemptuous face. No one spoke. No one moved. The only sound in the entire house was the high-pitched electronic whine from the television. My father, Joe, was trembling, the profound pain of the betrayal finally overwhelming him. He turned his head slowly, his eyes wide, filled with a searing agony that was terrifying to behold. He looked at Alicia, his beloved golden child, the one he had sacrificed everything for. Alicia, he whispered, his voice a dry, broken rattle. You, the old lady. The realization that the daughter he had elevated above me, the one for whom he had endured my mother's abuse and my silence, saw him and his wife as pathetic obstacles was utterly devastating. My mother, Lorraine, was not looking at Chad. She was not looking at me. She was staring only at Alicia. Her face was not angry. It was terrifyingly, sickly blank. It was the face of someone whose entire, carefully constructed world had just been obliterated by the very person she built it for. The child she had sacrificed everything for, the one she had just destroyed her relationship with me over, was exposed as a hateful, ungrateful traitor. Alicia, Lorraine said, her voice thin, weak, and utterly confused. She sounded like a lost, bewildered child. You called me the old lady? You were going to leave? Alicia's face instantly became a mask of pure reptilian panic. The con was up. The betrayal was complete. "Mom," she stammered frantically. "No, that's not. Imani edited that. She faked it. It's fake. Mommy, you have to believe me. It's not real." But it was too late. The betrayal was too complete. My mother had just seen the truth with her own eyes, heard the ugly venom directed at her, as Alicia's desperate, frantic cries of, "It's fake! It's fake!" echoed in the horrified living room. A new sound, a terrifying, final sound cut through the chaos. It wasn't the doorbell. It was a knock. A hard, official, rhythmic pounding on the heavy front door. Bang, bang, bang. Everyone froze instantly. Alicia's pathetic lies died in her throat. My father, staring at Alicia with dead, betrayed eyes, flinched violently. My mother, still frozen in her state of shock, looked at the door, her eyes terrified. Chad's face, which had been pale with exposure, turned a ghostly, waxy white. He knew that knock. That was not a social call. I, on the other hand, felt a strange, cold, utter calm settle over me. I had been waiting for that sound. "What? What is that?" Alicia whispered, her panic turning from her mother to the door. "Chad? Who is that?" Chad didn't answer. He was looking only at me, his eyes wide with a new, dawning, animalistic terror. He finally understood that he was not the predator in this room. He was the prey. I turned my back on all of them, walking calmly, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floor, past the long, ugly scratches Chad had made with his suitcases. I walked to the front door. I looked through the peephole. 2 uniformed Atlanta Police Department officers were standing on my porch. I took a deep, final breath, the air cold and cleansing. I turned the deadbolt. I opened the door. A male officer and a female officer stood there, their faces professional and grim. "Good evening, ma'am," the male officer said. "Are you Imani Davis?" "Yes, officer," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the chaos consuming my family. "I am. Thank you for coming. We received a 911 call from this address approximately 1 hour ago," the female officer said, her hand resting on her belt. "The call was regarding a domestic threat. Is everything all right here, Miss Davis?" My mother, Alicia, and Chad were all crowded in the hallway behind me, staring, their panic growing with every word. "Yes, officer," I said. "I am the one who made that call about an hour ago when my brother-in-law threatened me. And I'm afraid that since I made that call, the situation has escalated significantly." I stepped back, opening the door wide, inviting the absolute destruction of their lives inside. "Would you please come in?" The officers stepped inside, their eyes immediately scanning the room, taking in the grotesque, terrifying scene. They saw my 2 crying, terrified children peeking from the office doorway. They saw my father, crumpled and broken against the wall. They saw my mother, pale and shaking. They saw Alicia, her face streaked with tears and cheap makeup. And they saw Chad, standing stiffly, vibrating with trapped, frantic adrenaline. Then, they saw the massive television, still frozen on the humiliating image of Alicia's laughing, conspiratorial, treacherous face. "What kind of threats, Miss Davis?" the female officer asked, turning her attention back to me. "This man," I said, pointing directly at Chad, my finger unwavering. "My brother-in-law, Chad Miller. When I informed him that he and my sister were not welcome in my home, he threatened me. He threatened to file a false report against me with the IRS and use his connections to have my children, Zoe and Marcus, taken away by Child Protective Services." Chad scoffed instantly, trying desperately to regain his footing. "That is ridiculous. That's her word against mine. She's hysterical. She's the one you should be talking to." "She's not quite," I said, cutting him off with cold finality. "Officer, if you'll please look at the television." Both officers turned their gaze to the 80-inch screen. "That," I said, delivering the final, crushing truth, "is a video from a hidden security camera in this room, recorded this morning. It shows my sister and Mr. Miller discussing their plan to move and displace my children. And, as Mr. Miller puts it, get that last bit of money and be gone." I looked at the male officer, my eyes locking onto his. "And I also have Mr. Miller on a separate audio recording from a hidden camera in my office, detailing a plan to commit wire fraud by stealing the last $250,000 of my parents' retirement fund. The audio is crystal clear. He refers to my father as my idiot father-in-law and discusses how to clean the money so I wouldn't spot the transfer. The male officer's entire demeanor changed. The polite procedural concern was gone, replaced by hard, cold, professional authority. He looked at Chad with eyes of absolute, unwavering justice. "Sir, is that you on that audio recording?" The male officer's voice was sharp, professional, and devastatingly cold. Chad panicked, his entitlement finally dissolving into sheer terror. That's illegal. You can't record me. She can't. That's inadmissible in court." The female officer stepped toward him, her voice firm and absolute, silencing his pathetic legal protests. "Sir, Georgia is a one-party consent state for audio recording, and since Miss Davis was part of the original conversation you threatened her in, she has every right. But frankly, admissibility is for a judge to decide. What I have right now is a credible 911 call reporting a threat of extortion. I have a homeowner telling me you are trespassing, and I have what appears to be a confession to a conspiracy to commit felony financial fraud not just against your sister-in-law, but against your elderly in-laws ***. She nodded to her partner, the command chillingly clear. "Let's detain him. We can sort the rest out at the precinct." The male officer stepped forward. "Mr. Miller, I need you to place your hands behind your back." Chad finally truly lost it. "Get your hands off me. You can't do this. This is a family matter. Alicia, tell them it's all a lie." But Alicia was frozen, staring with wide, horrified eyes at the handcuffs as they came out. "Sir, do not resist," the officer commanded. Chad tried to pull his arm away, and in an instant, the officer had him spun around, his arm twisted behind his back, forcing him against the wall. The sound of the metal handcuffs, clicking shut, that sharp, definitive snick. Snick was the loudest, most satisfying sound I had ever heard in my life. That sound finally broke Alicia. "No," she screamed, a raw, animal sound of pure, blinding panic. She lunged forward, desperately clawing at the officer's arm. "No, you can't take him. He didn't do anything. It was her. Amani lied. She faked the video. She's the one you should be arresting. She's the criminal." The female officer grabbed Alicia, pulling her back forcefully. "Ma'am, you need to calm down right now, or you will be joining your husband, charged with obstruction of justice. Do you understand me?" Alicia collapsed onto the floor, her fight completely gone, dissolving into a pathetic, wailing heap as the male officer began to read Chad his Miranda rights. "You have the right to remain silent." The officer started walking the cursing, sputtering conman toward the door, dragging him out of my life forever. My mother, Lorraine, finally unfroze. Her entire world was annihilated. Her golden child was a traitor. Her protector, Chad, was a criminal. She had nothing left to lose, and everything was my fault. She stumbled toward me, her face a mask of raw, desperate, last-ditch pleading. "Imani, please," she sobbed, grabbing my arm, the same arm she had never once held in comfort when I was a child. "Please don't do this. He's family. You can't. Please, baby, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about the room. Tell them to stop. Tell them it was all just a misunderstanding." She was clinging to me now, her nails digging into my skin, the desperation absolute. "Please, Imani, I'm begging you." I looked down at her grasping hand on my arm. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just a vast, cold, consuming emptiness. I looked up and met her eyes, which were filled with confusion and terror. "A misunderstanding?" I asked, my voice as cold and dead as the basement floor where my children had shivered. Her face faltered. "When you threw my children, your grandchildren, into that cold, dark basement, was that a misunderstanding?" She pulled her hand back, defeated, but I kept going, driving the final stakes into her heart. "When you called Pastor John, when you lied to him, when you tried to destroy my reputation and turn the entire community against me to get your way, was that a misunderstanding?" She had no answer. She just stared at me, her mouth open, her tears suddenly stopping. "No, Mom," I said, my voice heavy with absolute judgment. "It wasn't. It was a choice. You made your choice." "And these," I said, gesturing to the scene of her complete ruin, the hysterical daughter, the fleeing conman, the broken husband, "are the consequences." As if summoned by my damning words, a third man, who had been standing quietly behind the police officers, stepped forward. He was not in uniform. He was in a rumpled suit, holding a clipboard and a thick envelope. "Excuse me," he said, his voice loud, formal, and bureaucratic. "Is there a Joseph Davis and a Lorraine Davis on the premises?" My father, still slumped brokenly against the wall, looked up, confused. My mother turned, her face a mask of total bewilderment. I am Lorraine Davis. What? What is it now? The man stepped forward, all business. My name is Marcus Jensen. I am a certified civil process server for the Fulton County Marshal's Department. Mr. Davis, Mrs. Davis, you are hereby served. He handed the thick envelope to my mother. She took it, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Served? What? What is this? I don't understand. The man, Mr. Jensen, looked down at his clipboard, his voice devoid of all human emotion. This, he said, is a notice to quit. It is an immediate lawful eviction notice. My mother's shriek was so high-pitched it barely sounded human, a cry of pure agonizing loss. No, no, this is my house, you can't. Imani. The process server just continued reading from his sheet, his voice cutting relentlessly through her screams. This notice is served on behalf of the legal and sole property owner, Miss Imani Davis. You are ordered to vacate the premises immediately. This is not a 30-day notice. This is a notice for an incurable breach of your lease. He looked down at the paper. Let's see. Specifically, GAO for violating Section 12B, permitting unauthorized long-term occupants. And yes, willingly and knowingly allowing criminal activity, specifically conspiracy to commit financial fraud, to be planned and executed on the premises. That's a severe violation. My father, Joe, finally completely broke. He made a sound like a deflating balloon and just crumpled. He slid down the wall and sat heavily on the floor, his head in his hands, rocking back and forth, a picture of absolute, permanent defeat. Lorraine just stood there, the white envelope clutched in her hand, her mouth open in a silent, agonizing scream. The process server looked at her, his face impassive. Ma'am, the Atlanta police officers are here to ensure that you gather your essential personal belongings, such as medications and identification, and vacate the premises immediately. You will be permitted to return with a police escort in exactly 24 hours to retrieve the rest of your belongings. After that, they will be considered abandoned property. He tipped his head slightly to me. Miss Davis, have a good night. The golden child was on the floor, weeping. The con man was in handcuffs, being led to a police car. The enabler was broken on the floor, and the matriarch was finally, utterly, definitively silenced. I turned my back on all of it. I walked away from the wreckage of the family that had never loved me. I walked over to the office doorway where Zoe and Marcus were huddled, their eyes wide, watching the final, terrible scene. I knelt down. My little boy Marcus was half asleep on his feet, exhausted by the day's terror. I smiled a real, warm smile, just for them. I picked Marcus up, settling his weight on my hip. I took Zoe's small, warm hand in mine. Come on, babies, I whispered, kissing them both. Let's go home. T's been 3 weeks. 3 weeks of quiet, cold peace in this house that they once contaminated with their vicious entitlement. The house is clean now. The heavy, oppressive furniture, my mother insisted on all of it designed to project a false status they never earned, is gone, thankfully donated to charity. The hideous basketball pennants are stripped from the walls. Zoe's bright, colorful artwork is back where it belongs, decorating the walls of her own room. Marcus's star-patterned curtains are hanging in his window again, filtering the afternoon sun into a comfortable, safe glow. We are in the kitchen now, where the light streams in, honest and pure. Zoe is laughing, a streak of flour across her nose, a sound of pure, unburdened happiness I hadn't truly heard in years. Marcus is meticulous, carefully placing chocolate chips onto a sheet of cookie dough. The smell of baking sugar and vanilla fills the air, a scent of safety and home. My name is Imani, and for 39 long years, I tried to buy love from the family I was born into. I thought if I was just more successful, if I earned more money, if I took on more of their crushing financial burdens and solved more of their irresponsible problems, if I just built them a big enough house, then maybe, just maybe, one day my mother would finally look at me and say the 4 words I always desperately wanted to hear. I am proud of you. The day she threw my children, my own flesh and blood, into that cold, dark basement, I finally, unequivocally understood that day was never going to come, and now I am completely, blessedly, okay with that terrifying truth. The consequences I unleashed have played out with the cold, precise logic of a well-designed financial model. Chad is facing multiple serious fraud charges. The audio and video evidence I provided to the police, combined with the IRS investigation I expertly triggered by exposing his Cayman Islands call, means he will likely be in prison for a very long time. Alicia, with her bank accounts frozen as part of the investigation and not a single penny to her name, had to take Leo and beg Aunt Clara for a place to stay. The very community that my mother tried to weaponize against me is now watching her golden child live on humiliating church charity. My father calls me every day. He leaves these long, rambling, tearful voicemails, filled with useless regret and hollow, self-pitying excuses. I haven't answered the phone. I don't know if I ever will. And my mother, Lorraine, in a final, predictable act of arrogant entitlement, actually tried to sue me. She filed a civil claim arguing that she had an equity interest in my house because she had acted as a house sitter for 2 years. The judge simply looked at the lease agreement and her signed admission of violating the terms of that lease. He dismissed the entire pathetic case in less than 5 minutes. It turns out that when you treat a generous gift as an absolute entitlement, you eventually, deservedly lose both the gift and your dignity. I learned that you cannot choose the family you are born into. But you have every right, and indeed every responsibility, to absolutely protect the family you create. Have you ever had to set an iron boundary with your own family, a decisive point of no return to protect your peace? Let me know your story in the comments below. Zoe laughs, a bright, beautiful, carefree sound, and she throws her flowery arms around my neck. I hug her back, inhaling the scent of her clean hair and her happiness. Marcus, not wanting to be left out of the love, burrows in, wrapping his sticky chocolatey hands around us both. I hold them tight, breathing in the smell of sugar and absolute safety. For the very first time, this house, my house, finally, truly feels like home. This story teaches us that true family is defined by respect and protection, not just by blood. For years, I tried to buy the love of a family that was determined to undervalue me, determined to see me only as a resource. I learned that my self-worth was never tied to their validation. The day I stopped seeking their pathetic approval and started fiercely protecting my children was the precise day I truly claimed my power. Sometimes the strongest boundary is not an act of cruelty, but a necessary, definitive act of self-preservation. You cannot choose the family you are born into, but you must, absolutely must, protect the family you create.